First contact. Sarah Chen stood at her post, her keen eyes scanning the bustling docking bay of Nexus Station. The massive space station, a hub of interstellar commerce and diplomacy, hung in the inky void at the crossroads of a dozen trade routes. As chief of security, it was Sarah's job to keep the peace among the cacophony of alien species that called Nexus their temporary home. Today, however, something felt different. The usual hum of activity was punctuated by an undercurrent of tension. Alien merchants and diplomats huddled in small groups, their voices low and urgent. Sarah's hand instinctively brushed the stunner at her hip as she approached a cluster of Zintheri, their iridescent scales shimmering with agitation. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her universal translator rendering her words into a series of melodic clicks. The lead Zintheri, a merchant Sarah knew as Calzin, turned his compound eyes toward her. "Human Sarah, have you not heard? A ship approaches, one unlike any we have seen before." Sarah frowned. Unidentified vessels were rare at Nexus, given the station's strict protocols. She tapped her comm unit, connecting to the control center. "This is Chen. What's the status on our incoming visitor?" The response came swiftly, tinged with confusion. "Chief, we're not sure. The ship doesn't match any known configuration. They're requesting emergency docking and asylum." Asylum. Sarah's eyebrows shot up. In her 5 years on Nexus, she'd never encountered such a request. From whom? "They won't say, Chief, but they claim to be in immediate danger." Sarah's mind raced through protocols and potential scenarios. Granting access to an unknown species could pose countless risks, but denying aid to those in genuine peril went against everything Nexus and humanity stood for. "Clear docking bay 7, she ordered. "I want a full security team in place, non-lethal measures only, and alert the medical bay. We may have wounded incoming." As Sarah strode towards the docking bay, she could feel the eyes of 100 alien species upon her. Humans were relative newcomers to the galactic stage, still proving their worth among civilizations that counted their histories in millennia. Every decision, every action, was scrutinized. The weight of that responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders like a familiar, if sometimes uncomfortable, burden. The docking bay doors hissed open, revealing a ship that seemed to defy conventional design. Its hull shimmered with an opalescent sheen, organic curves blending seamlessly with sharp geometric patterns. As the docking clamps engaged, a ripple of anticipation swept through the gathered crowd. Sarah stepped forward, flanked by her security team. Her voice rang out, clear and authoritative. "This is Chief Security Officer Sarah Chen of Nexus Station. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose." For a moment, silence reigned. Then, with a sound like rushing water, a section of the ship's hull began to shift and flow. An opening appeared, and from it emerged a being unlike any Sarah had encountered. The alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body a symphony of translucent tendrils and crystalline structures. Multiple limbs. Sarah couldn't be sure how many, moved with hypnotic grace. When it spoke, the words seemed to form directly in Sarah's mind, bypassing her translator entirely. "We are the Luminae," the being conveyed. "We come seeking sanctuary from those who would destroy us for the gift we possess." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion erupted behind her. A delegation of Vroktar, a warrior species known for their quick tempers, pushed their way to the front of the crowd. "The Luminae are forbidden," the Vroktar leader bellowed, his red-tinged exoskeleton bristling with aggression. "Their presence here violates ancient treaties. Expel them immediately, human, or face the consequences." Sarah felt the situation balancing on a knife's edge. The Vroktar were valuable allies, their military might a deterrent to those who might threaten Nexus. But the plea of the Luminae tugged at her conscience, awakening the deep-seated human drive to protect the vulnerable. In that moment, Sarah made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. She stepped between the Luminae and the advancing Vroktar, her voice ringing with conviction. On behalf of Nexus Station and the principles of galactic cooperation, I grant temporary asylum to the Luminae, pending a full hearing of their case. The Vroktar leader's mandibles clacked in fury. You risk war, human. Sarah met his gaze unflinchingly. And you risk violating the very foundation of Nexus, a place of peace, diplomacy, and mutual understanding. Stand down, or I'll have you escorted from this station. For a tense moment, it seemed the Vroktar might attack, but something in Sarah's unwavering stance gave them pause. With a final, menacing click, they retreated, leaving a wake of murmurs and speculation among the onlookers. Sarah turned back to the Luminae, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Welcome to Nexus Station. I'll need to know more about who's pursuing you and why. But first, let's get you to secure quarters. As she led the Luminae away, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she had just set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. Humanity had taken a stand, for better or worse. Now they would have to deal with the consequences. The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah oversaw the Luminae's accommodation in a high-security sector of the station, fielded increasingly agitated communiques from various alien factions, and prepared for what promised to be a contentious emergency council meeting. As she stood before the assembled representatives of a dozen species, Sarah took a deep breath. The chamber buzzed with tension, accusations flying between longtime allies. Order. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. We are here to address the situation calmly and rationally. The Luminae have requested asylum, claiming to be in danger. As per Nexus protocols, we are obligated to hear their case. The Vroktar ambassador rose, his exoskeleton flushed a deep crimson. The Luminae are not signatories to any Nexus treaties. They have no rights here. A ripple of agreement passed through several delegations. Sarah held up a hand for silence. The principles of Nexus extend beyond mere treaties, she countered. We are a haven for all sentient beings seeking peaceful coexistence. To turn away those in need without even hearing their plight would be a betrayal of everything we stand for. The Zinthari representative, Kalazin, spoke up. The human speaks wisdom. Let us hear what the Luminae have to say. With a gesture from Sarah, the Luminae delegate glided into the center of the chamber. Its crystalline form seemed to pulse with an inner light as it addressed the council. We are a race of scholars and scientists. The Luminae began, its thoughts resonating in the minds of all present. For eons, we have studied the fundamental forces of the universe. Recently, we made a discovery, one that could revolutionize travel, communication, and energy production across the galaxy. The chamber fell silent, all eyes fixed on the luminous being. But this knowledge comes at a price, the Luminae continued. There are those who would use it for destruction, to dominate rather than uplift. They pursue us relentlessly, seeking to extract our discovery by any means necessary. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. Sarah leaned forward, her brow furrowed. Who exactly is pursuing you? The Luminae's form shimmered, projecting an image of sleek, predatory ships. They call themselves the Void Consortium, an alliance of renegade factions from various species, united by their lust for power. Recognition dawned on several faces in the chamber. The Void Consortium was a name whispered in shadowy corners of space stations and frontier outposts. Pirates and marauders of the worst sort. How do we know this isn't some ploy? The Vroktar ambassador demanded. The Luminae could be lying to gain our protection, while they develop weapons to use against us all. Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Her comm unit crackled to life with an urgent message from the control center. Chief Chen, multiple unidentified vessels have just dropped out of FTL near the station. They're not responding to hails and are on an intercept course. Sarah's blood ran cold. She turned to the assembled delegates, her voice ringing with authority. This council is suspended. All non-essential personnel, please return to your quarters. Security teams to your designated posts. As the chamber erupted into chaos, Sarah locked eyes with the Luminae delegate. "It seems your pursuers have found you. Now we need to know everything you can tell us about their capabilities." The Luminae's form pulsed with what Sarah interpreted as grim determination. "We will share what we know. But understand, Security Officer Chen, that by granting us asylum, you have placed your station, and perhaps humanity itself, in the crosshairs of a force that will stop at nothing to achieve its goals." Sarah nodded, a mix of fear and resolve coursing through her. "Then we'll just have to show them that humanity doesn't back down from a fight, especially when innocent lives are at stake." As she rushed from the chamber to coordinate Nexus's defenses, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if she had just committed all of humanity to a war they weren't prepared for. But deep down, she knew she had made the only choice she could live with. Now it was time to prove that humanity's place among the stars was well earned. The first shots of an interstellar conflict were about to be fired, and Sarah Chen, along with the diverse inhabitants of Nexus Station, found themselves on the front lines. The galactic threat. The control center of Nexus Station thrummed with nervous energy as Sarah Chen strode in, her face a mask of determination. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the approaching Void Consortium ships, a menacing fleet of sleek, dark vessels that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the light of nearby stars. "Status report," Sarah barked, her eyes scanning the tactical readouts. Lieutenant Zara Curry, a fellow human and Sarah's second-in-command, responded crisply. 12 consortium ships detected, Chief. They formed a blockade formation around the station. No weapons fired yet, but they're charging systems." Sarah's mind raced through options. Nexus was primarily a trade hub, not a military installation. Its defenses, while not insignificant, were designed to deter pirates and handle the occasional drunken brawl, not repel a coordinated attack from a well-armed fleet. "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. "Let's see if we can resolve this without bloodshed." The main view screen flickered, revealing a humanoid figure shrouded in shadows. Only its eyes were clearly visible, cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of mercy. "This is Security Chief Sarah Chen of Nexus Station. You have entered restricted space without authorization. State your purpose immediately." The figure's voice was a low, menacing rasp. "You harbor fugitives, human. The beings you call Luminae possess knowledge that rightfully belongs to the Void Consortium. Surrender them, or we will take them by force." Sarah's jaw tightened. "The Luminae have requested asylum, which has been granted under Nexus protocols. Any act of aggression against this station will be considered a violation of galactic law." A chilling laugh emanated from the view screen. "Laws? We are beyond your petty regulations. You have 1 hour to comply, or we will reduce your station to atoms." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a tense silence in its wake. "Well," Zara said, breaking the quiet, "they seem nice." Despite the gravity of the situation, Sarah felt a smile tug at her lips. It was so very human, that ability to find humor even in the darkest moments. She turned to her team, her voice filled with resolve. "All right, people. We've got 1 hour to turn this trading post into a fortress. Let's make it count." The next 60 minutes were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah coordinated with the station's engineering team to reroute power to the shields and weapons systems. She organized the various alien security forces into a cohesive defense plan, leveraging each species' unique abilities. The Zinthuri, with their natural affinity for technology, worked to enhance the station's sensor capabilities. The Vroktar, their earlier objections temporarily set aside in the face of a common enemy, took charge of organizing fighter squadrons from the various merchant and diplomatic ships docked at the station. As the deadline approached, Sarah made her way to the secure sector where the Luminae were housed. She found their leader, if that was the right term for a being that seemed to be both an individual and a collective, pulsing with agitated energy. "Your station cannot withstand their assault," the Luminae conveyed, its thoughts tinged with guilt and fear. "Perhaps if we surrendered ourselves." "Not an option." Sarah cut in firmly. We don't abandon those under our protection, but we could use your help. You said you've made a discovery. Is there anything in your research that could aid in our defense? The Luminae's crystalline form shimmered thoughtfully. Perhaps. Our work involves the manipulation of fundamental cosmic forces. With some adaptation, we might be able to create localized disruptions in the fabric of space-time. Sarah's eyes widened as the implications sank in. You mean we could throw off their targeting systems, maybe even disrupt their weapons? In theory, yes, but it would require incredibly precise calculations and timing. A plan began to form in Sarah's mind. Then we'll give you the best minds on the station to work with. If we can buy ourselves some time, we might just stand a chance. As Sarah rushed back to the control center, alarms blared throughout the station. The hour was up, and the Void Consortium was making good on its threat. The first volley of energy weapons splashed against Nexus's hastily reinforced shields, causing the entire structure to shudder. Shields at 82% and holding, Zora reported, her fingers dancing over the tactical controls. Our return fire is barely scratching their hulls. Sarah gritted her teeth. Concentrate fire on their lead ship. All fighter squadrons, engage and harass. We just need to hold out until the Luminae can implement their plan. The space around Nexus erupted into chaos. The station's weapons blazed, while fighters darted between the massive consortium ships like angry insects, but it was clear that they were outmatched. With each passing minute, the shields weakened further. Just as despair began to creep into the hearts of the defenders, a strange ripple passed through space. The consortium ships suddenly seemed to lose cohesion, their formations breaking apart as if confused. It's working, Sarah exclaimed. The Luminae's space-time disruptions are throwing off their systems. All units, press the advantage. The tide of battle shifted. With the consortium ships disoriented, the defenders of Nexus were able to land decisive blows. 2 enemy vessels erupted in spectacular explosions, their debris scattering across the starfield. Consortium fleet is in disarray, Zara reported, a note of triumph in her voice. They're retreating. A cheer went up throughout the control center, but Sarah remained focused. Don't celebrate yet. They'll be back, and in greater numbers. We've just bought ourselves some time. As the last consortium ship winked into FTL, leaving behind a battered but unbroken Nexus station, Sarah allowed herself a moment to breathe. The battle was won, but she knew the war was far from over. In the hours that followed, Nexus became a hive of activity. Repair crews worked tirelessly to mend the damage from the attack, while Sarah coordinated with the station's diplomatic corps to send out distress calls to nearby systems and species. The response was overwhelming. Ships began arriving from all corners of known space, not just military vessels, but traders, scientists, and explorers from a dozen different species. The plight of Nexus and the Luminae had struck a chord across the galaxy. As Sarah stood in the bustling docking bay, watching the influx of allies, she felt a presence beside her. It was the Luminae delegate, its crystalline form pulsing with what she had come to recognize as a mix of gratitude and concern. You have done more than simply grant us asylum, Sarah Chen, the Luminae communicated. You have ignited a spark of unity in a galaxy often divided by old grudges and petty differences. Sarah nodded, her eyes still on the arriving ships. It's what humans do. We may be newcomers to the galactic stage, but if there's one thing we understand, it's standing up for what's right, no matter the odds. The Luminae's form shimmered with curiosity. Your species continues to fascinate us. So young, yet so willing to risk everything for principles. We begin to understand why you have adapted so quickly to life among the stars. Before Sarah could respond, her comm unit buzzed urgently. It was Zora, her voice tight with tension. Chief, you need to see this. We're picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. Sarah's heart raced as she rushed back to the control center, the Luminae gliding swiftly beside her. The main view screen showed a swirling vortex of dark energy, growing larger by the second. "What are we looking at?" Sarah demanded, her eyes fixed on the ominous display. The Luminae's thoughts radiated grim recognition. "It is as we feared. The Void Consortium has brought their ultimate weapon, a ship powered by the very cosmic forces we sought to understand. They mean to end this conflict decisively." As if in response to the Luminae's words, the vortex stabilized, revealing a ship of impossible proportions. It dwarfed the Nexus station, its hull a writhing mass of dark energy barely contained in physical form. A transmission crackled through the comms, the same cold voice they had heard before. "Your defiance ends now. Surrender the Luminae and their research, or watch as we unmake your very reality." Sarah felt the weight of countless lives pressing down upon her. The combined fleet that had come to Nexus's aid seemed insignificant in the face of this new threat. But as she looked around at the determined faces of her crew, human and alien alike, she knew retreat was not an option. "We need a plan," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her gut. "Something they won't expect. Something human." As the monstrous Void Consortium ship loomed ever closer, Sarah Chen prepared to make a stand that would echo across the stars. The fate of not just Nexus Station, but perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance, and at the center of it all stood humanity. Young, brash, and unaware of just how pivotal their role in the cosmic drama was about to become. Human ingenuity unleashed. The control center of Nexus Station hummed with tense energy as Sarah Chen paced before the main view screen, her mind racing. The Void Consortium's behemoth of a ship loomed large, its very presence seeming to warp the fabric of space around it. "Options, people," Sarah barked, her eyes scanning the worried faces of her diverse crew. "I need options, and I need them 5 minutes ago." Zara Khoury, her fingers dancing over the tactical console, spoke up first. "Our combined fleet is formidable, Chief, but against that thing, it'd be like throwing pebbles at a black hole." The Luminae delegate, its crystalline form pulsing with agitated energy, added its thoughts to the discussion. "The vessel appears to be harnessing vacuum energy on an unprecedented scale. A direct confrontation would be inadvisable." Sarah nodded grimly. They couldn't outgun the enemy, that much was clear. But there had to be a way, some angle they hadn't considered yet. Her gaze fell on a schematic of Nexus Station, and a spark of an idea began to form. "What if we don't fight it directly?" she mused aloud. "What if we turn its own power against it?" The Luminae's form shimmered with interest. "Elaborate, please." Sarah's words came faster as the plan crystallized in her mind. "You said they're harnessing vacuum energy, right? Well, Nexus has been accumulating exotic particles from a dozen different star systems for years. What if we could use that to create a localized distortion, something that would interfere with their energy containment?" A ripple of excitement passed through the control center. Zara's eyes widened as she caught on to Sarah's train of thought. Like using a tuning fork to shatter a glass. But Chief, the precision required to pull that off would be beyond any one species, Sarah finished. "But we're not just one species anymore, are we?" She turned to address the assembled representatives of the various races that had come to Nexus's aid. "Each of you brings unique knowledge and abilities to the table. Apart, we're outmatched. But together, we just might have a shot at this." The next hour was a whirlwind of activity. Sarah coordinated a plan that leveraged the strengths of each species. The Xinthari's unparalleled grasp of quantum mechanics was combined with the Vroktar's expertise in weapon systems. The Luminae's understanding of cosmic forces was integrated with human intuition and out-of-the-box thinking. As the final preparations were made, Sarah stood before the united crew, a mix of determination and gravity in her voice. "What we're about to attempt has never been done before. The risks are enormous. If anyone wants to back out, now's the time." A Vroktar warrior stepped forward, his mandibles clicking with resolve. "We stood against you when the Luminae first arrived. We were wrong. Today, we stand with you, human, to victory or oblivion." A chorus of agreement echoed through the chamber. Sarah felt a swell of pride and responsibility. This was humanity's moment, not to dominate, but to lead through cooperation and shared purpose. "All right then," she said, her voice steady. "Let's show the Void Consortium what happens when you threaten one of us." The plan was audacious in its complexity and simple in its ultimate goal. Using Nexus Station itself as a giant focusing array, they would channel the accumulated exotic particles into a beam of pure chaos, a subspace lance designed to disrupt the delicate balance of energies powering the Consortium's doomsday weapon. As the final countdown began, Sarah took her place at the primary control station. Her hands flew over the controls, coordinating the efforts of a dozen different teams. Zinthari quantum stabilizers online. Vroktar targeting systems locked. Luminae cosmic harmonizers at full power. The Void Consortium ship grew larger on the view screen, its weapons charging for what it surely thought would be a decisive blow. Little did they know that Nexus Station was about to strike first. "All systems go," Zara reported, her voice tense. "Ready on your mark, Chief." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Fire." Nexus Station shuddered as unimaginable energies coursed through its superstructure. A lance of coruscating light erupted from its central spire, streaking across the void towards the Consortium vessel. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash that seared itself into the retinas of every observer, the massive ship began to warp and distort. Its sleek lines twisted in on themselves as the carefully controlled energies at its core were thrown into chaos. "It's working," someone shouted, and a ragged cheer went up around the control center. But Sarah's elation was short-lived. Alarms blared as feedback from the subspace lance threatened to overwhelm Nexus's systems. "Power fluctuations across all decks," Zara reported, her fingers flying over the controls. "We can't sustain this for much longer." Sarah gritted her teeth. They were so close. "Reroute all non-essential power. We need to hold on just a little longer." The station groaned under the strain, but the united crew worked as one to keep the subspace lance focused on its target. On the view screen, the Consortium ship's distortions grew more pronounced with each passing second. Just as it seemed Nexus would tear itself apart from the effort, there was a blinding flash. When the light faded, the massive Consortium vessel was gone, leaving behind nothing but a rapidly dissipating cloud of exotic particles. For a moment, stunned silence reigned in the control center. Then, as the realization of what they had accomplished sank in, a deafening cheer erupted. Aliens of a dozen species embraced one another, their differences forgotten in the shared triumph. Sarah slumped in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. They had done it. Against all odds, they had faced down the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, and won. As the celebration raged around her, Sarah felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. She looked up to see the Luminae delegate, its crystalline form glowing with an inner light that seemed brighter than ever before. "You have done more than save us, Sarah Chen," the Luminae communicated. "You have shown the galaxy what can be accomplished when we set aside our fears and work together." The Void Consortium sought to unmake reality. Instead, you have remade it, for the better. Sarah smiled, the full impact of their victory beginning to sink in. "We all did this together." Human ingenuity might have sparked the idea, but it was the combined strength of every species here that made it a reality. As news of the Consortium's defeat spread across subspace channels, ships from even more distant star systems began to arrive. The battle for Nexus Station had become a rallying cry, a symbol of what could be achieved through unity and cooperation. Sarah knew that the coming days would be filled with diplomacy, rebuilding, and the forging of new alliances. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity, once seen as upstart newcomers, had proven themselves worthy inheritors of the cosmic legacy. As she looked out at the sea of diverse faces, human and alien alike, all united in purpose. Sarah Chen realized that this was just the beginning. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, beckoning them towards a future filled with endless possibilities. The counterstrike. In the days following the miraculous defeat of the Void Consortium's doomsday weapon, Nexus Station buzzed with an energy unlike anything in its history. Representatives from hundreds of worlds poured in, drawn by the tale of how a united front of diverse species had stood against seemingly insurmountable odds, and won. Sarah Chen found herself at the center of it all, hailed as the architect of their unlikely victory. But as she stood before the hastily assembled galactic conclave, she felt the weight of unfinished business pressing down upon her. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice carrying across the packed chamber, "we have won a great victory, but our work is far from over. The Void Consortium may have lost its superweapon, but its threat remains. As long as they possess even a fraction of the Luminae's research, countless worlds are in danger." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Vroktar ambassador, once her fierce opponent, now nodded in staunch support. "What do you propose, Security Chief Chen?" asked a wizened Zintheri elder, his compound eyes glittering with curiosity. Sarah took a deep breath. What she was about to suggest was audacious, perhaps even reckless. But if her time on Nexus had taught her anything, it was that the greatest achievements often lay just beyond the realm of the possible. "I propose a counterstrike," she said, her words ringing with conviction. "A mission to infiltrate the Consortium's stronghold, recover the stolen research, and dismantle their organization from within." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, some supportive, others skeptical, all impassioned. Sarah waited for the din to subside before continuing. "I know it sounds impossible. The Consortium's base is hidden in the heart of the Maelstrom Nebula, a region of space so turbulent that conventional navigation is useless. But together, we've already achieved the impossible once. I believe we can do it again." Over the next hour, Sarah laid out her plan. It was a daring strategy that would require the unique skills and knowledge of multiple species working in perfect harmony. The Luminae's mastery of cosmic forces would be crucial in navigating the Maelstrom. The Zintheri's quantum computing expertise would be needed to crack the Consortium's formidable cyber defenses. The Vroktar's martial prowess would be essential for the ground assault. And at the heart of it all would be a small team of infiltrators, led by Sarah herself, to penetrate the Consortium's inner sanctum and retrieve the stolen research. As she concluded her presentation, Sarah looked out over the assembled representatives. She saw fear in some eyes, doubt in others. But overwhelmingly, she saw determination, a shared resolve to see this through to the end. The Luminae delegate glided forward, its crystalline form pulsing with an inner light. "We owe our existence to the bravery of Nexus Station and its allies. If Security Chief Chen believes this mission is necessary, we will lend our full support." One by one, the other species pledged their aid. Even those who could not directly participate in the mission offered resources, intelligence, and moral support. Sarah felt a swell of emotion as she witnessed the birth of something truly remarkable. A galactic community united not by treaties or economic interests, but by a shared commitment to justice and mutual protection. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. A stealth ship, christened the Nexus Shadow, was outfitted with technology from a dozen different worlds. Its hull was reinforced with Vroktar battleplate, its sensors enhanced by Zintheri quantum arrays, its very structure imbued with the Luminae's space warping properties. As the day of departure approached, Sarah found herself in the ship's cargo hold, double-checking supplies. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Zara, her faithful second-in-command. "The crew's all aboard, Chief," Zara reported. "We're as ready as we'll ever be." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and apprehension. "This is it, Zara. No turning back now." Zara's expression was solemn. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am." "Always. What you've done here, uniting all these different species, giving them a common purpose. It's unprecedented. Win or lose, you've changed the course of galactic history. Sarah felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. Let's make sure it's a change for the better, then. We didn't come this far to fail now. As they made their way to the bridge, Sarah's mind raced with the challenges that lay ahead. The Maelstrom Nebula was a navigational nightmare, a swirling chaos of cosmic radiation and gravitational anomalies. And beyond that lurked the Void Consortium, smarting from their defeat and surely prepared for retaliation. But as she took her place in the captain's chair and looked around at her diverse crew, human, Lumine, Zintheri, Vroktar, and others, she felt a surge of confidence. They had assembled the finest minds and bravest hearts the galaxy had to offer. If anyone could pull this off, it was them. All stations, report in, Sarah commanded, her voice steady. One by one, the crew confirmed their readiness. The ship's systems hummed with power, a symphony of technologies working in harmony. Nexus Control, this is Nexus Shadow, Sarah said into the comm. We are go for launch. Godspeed, Nexus Shadow, came the response from the station. The hopes of the galaxy go with you. With a barely perceptible shudder, the Nexus Shadow detached from its docking clamps and glided out into open space. As the familiar confines of the station receded behind them, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. They were venturing into the unknown, carrying the fate of countless worlds with them. The journey to the edge of the Maelstrom Nebula was tense but uneventful. It was only as they approached the swirling, chaotic expanse that the true challenge of their mission became apparent. By the cosmic core, breathed the Zintheri navigator, his compound eyes wide with awe. The turbulence is even worse than our models predicted. Conventional navigation will be useless in there. Sarah nodded grimly. Then it's a good thing we don't rely on conventional anything. Lumine team, you're up. The Lumine crew members moved to their stations, their crystalline forms pulsing with concentrated energy. As one, they began to manipulate the ship's unique drive system, bending space-time around the vessel in subtle, complex ways. The effect was immediate and disorienting. The view screen showed the chaotic energies of the maelstrom parting before them like a curtain, creating a bubble of calm space around the ship. Remarkable, Zara murmured, watching the readings on her console. They're not just navigating the turbulence, they're actively reshaping local space-time to our advantage. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. This was exactly the kind of impossible feat they had assembled this crew to achieve. Steady as she goes. Keep us on course for the coordinates we extrapolated for the consortium base. For hours, they pressed deeper into the maelstrom. The strain on the Lumine navigators was evident, their crystalline forms flickering with the effort of maintaining their space warping field. Just as it seemed they might need to pause to regroup, a dark shape loomed ahead in the swirling chaos. Contact, called out the Vroktar tactical officer, his mandibles clicking with tension. Structure dead ahead. Profile matches our intelligence on the consortium base. Sarah leaned forward in her chair, eyes fixed on the view screen. The consortium stronghold was a massive, twisted structure that seemed to absorb the light around it. It was an imposing sight, but they had come too far to be intimidated now. All right, people, this is it, Sarah said, her voice steady and determined. Stealth systems to maximum. Zintheri cyber team, begin your assault on their systems. Vroktar squad, prepare for boarding action. This is what we came for. Let's show the consortium what happens when you mess with a united galaxy. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The Zintheri cyber specialists launched a multi-pronged attack on the consortium's defenses, their quantum algorithms slicing through firewalls and security protocols. Meanwhile, the Vroktar boarding team, with Sarah at their head, prepared to launch as soon as a breach was secured. We've got an opening. Zara's voice came through Sarah's comm. Docking tube C7. It's now or never, Chief. Sarah nodded to her team. Let's move. They burst from the airlock, propelling themselves across the short expanse of open space towards the breach in the consortium's hull. As they crossed the threshold, alarms began to blare throughout the enemy structure. "Looks like our invitation just arrived," Sarah quipped, drawing her weapon. "Stay sharp, everyone. Remember the plan. We go for the central data core. Everything else is secondary." The team fought their way through twisting corridors, facing off against consortium security forces. The Vroktar warriors were in their element, their natural combat prowess enhanced by the latest in galactic weaponry. Sarah found herself marveling at how smoothly they worked together, species that had been bitter rivals now fighting side by side, as if they'd trained together for years. As they neared the central core, resistance stiffened. Sarah's team found themselves pinned down in a large chamber, surrounded by consortium elite guards. "We're running out of time," shouted the Xanthari tech specialist. "Their systems are adapting to our intrusion. We need to reach that data core now." Sarah's mind raced. They were so close, but the path ahead seemed impossible to breach. Then her eyes fell on a piece of debris from their firefight, a small spherical object that had broken off from a nearby console. In that moment, a crazy, utterly human idea formed in her mind. "Cover me," she yelled, scooping up the sphere. Before anyone could stop her, Sarah sprinted towards the enemy line, ducking and weaving through a hail of energy blasts. With all the strength she could muster, she hurled the sphere towards the densest cluster of consortium guards. As it arced through the air, she raised her weapon and fired a single, precise shot. The sphere exploded in a blinding flash of light and energy. The consortium troops, their senses overloaded, stumbled in confusion. "Now," Sarah shouted. "Push through." Her team seized the moment, surging forward. In the chaos, they broke through the enemy line and burst into the central data core. The room was a marvel of twisted technology, with the stolen Luminae research clearly visible at its heart. Sarah moved quickly, interfacing their quantum drives with the consortium systems. "Download initiated," the Xanthari tech announced. Estimated time to completion: 60 seconds. Those 60 seconds felt like an eternity as the team held off wave after wave of consortium reinforcements. But finally, mercifully, the console chimed. "Download complete. We got it all." And I'd left them a little surprise in their systems. Sarah allowed herself a fierce grin. "Then let's not overstay our welcome. Fall back to the ship." The retreat was as chaotic as their entrance, but now they moved with the momentum of victory. As they raced back to the Nexus shadow, explosions began to rock the consortium base, the surprise left behind by the Xanthari hackers doing its work. As the airlock sealed behind a last team member, Sarah's voice rang out, "Get us out of here, now." The Nexus shadow peeled away from the disintegrating consortium stronghold, its Luminae navigators once again weaving a path through the maelstrom's chaos. Behind them, the massive structure collapsed in on itself, taking with it the threat that had loomed over the galaxy. As they emerged from the nebula, a cheer went up throughout the ship. They had done it. Against all odds, they had struck at the heart of the Void Consortium and emerged victorious. Sarah slumped into her chair, exhaustion and elation warring within her. She looked around at her crew, human, Luminae, Xanthari, Vroktar, and more, all worn and battered, but alive and triumphant. "Well done, everyone," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Let's go home." As the Nexus shadow set course for the station, Sarah knew that they were returning to a galaxy forever changed. The bonds forged in this crucible of danger and shared purpose would not easily be broken. A new era of cooperation and mutual understanding had begun. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, no longer the new kids on the galactic block, but proven leaders in a brighter, more united cosmic community. Part 5. A new era of cooperation. The return of the Nexus shadow to its eponymous station was met with jubilation unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. News of their victory over the Void Consortium spread faster than light itself, carried by subspace relays and telepathic broadcasts to every corner of known space. As Sarah Chen stepped off the ship, she was engulfed in a sea of cheering beings, a kaleidoscope of species united in celebration. The Galactic Conclave, hastily reassembled, was waiting to receive her and her team. Security Chief Sarah Chen intoned the Xinthari elder who served as the Conclave's spokesperson. You and your crew have accomplished what many thought impossible. You have not only safeguarded the Luminae and their knowledge, but have struck a decisive blow against a threat that would have plunged our galaxy into darkness. How can we possibly repay such a debt? Sarah looked out over the assembled representatives, her voice steady and clear. There is no debt to repay. What we accomplished, we did together. Every being on that mission, every species that contributed, we all played a part in this victory. And in doing so, we've proven something that will reshape our galaxy for generations to come. She paused, letting her words sink in. We've proven that our differences are not weaknesses to be overcome, but strengths to be celebrated. That when we stand united, there is no force in the universe that can stand against us. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Luminae delegate glided forward, its crystalline form pulsing with an inner light that seemed brighter than ever before. Sarah Chen speaks wisdom beyond her years, the Luminae communicated. Our research, which the Void Consortium sought to weaponize, was always meant to bring enlightenment and progress. Now, we see a way to fulfill that purpose beyond our wildest dreams. The Luminae's form shimmered, projecting a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed a network of interconnected worlds, linked by shimmering lines of energy. With the knowledge we have gained, and the spirit of cooperation birthed in this conflict, we propose the creation of a galactic harmonization network, a system that will allow instant communication and resource sharing across vast distances, bringing our civilizations closer than ever before. The chamber erupted in excited discussion. The implications were staggering: an end to isolation, a new age of shared knowledge and mutual support. As the conclave debated the proposal, Sarah found herself approached by an unlikely pair, the Vroktar ambassador and a young Xinthari scientist. We have been inspired by your example, Security Chief, the Vroktar rumbled, his mandibles clicking in what Sarah had come to recognize as embarrassment. Our peoples have been rivals for generations, but in fighting alongside each other, we have discovered more that unites us than divides us. The Xinthari nodded enthusiastically. We're proposing the Joint Research Initiative, combining Vroktar martial knowledge with Xinthari scientific expertise. Imagine the advances we could make in defensive technologies, in exploration capabilities. Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her chest. This was exactly the kind of collaboration she had hoped their mission would inspire. That's fantastic, she said, grinning. And please, call me Sarah. I think we're well past formalities at this point. As the day wore on, more and more such initiatives were proposed. Species that had once viewed each other with suspicion or outright hostility were finding common ground, inspired by the example set by the Nexus Shadow's diverse crew. Amidst the flurry of activity, Sarah found a quiet moment to stand by one of Nexus Station's vast viewing windows. The starfield beyond seemed somehow brighter, more full of promise than ever before. She felt a presence beside her and turned to see Zara, her faithful second-in-command. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Zara said, gazing out at the stars. "Hard to believe how much has changed in such a short time." Sarah nodded, a mix of pride and wonder in her voice. "When I first took this post, I never imagined anything like this. We came out here looking for new worlds, new civilizations. Instead, we found a way to bring the entire galaxy together." Zara smiled. "You know, there's already talk of formalizing this coalition. Some are calling it the United Galactic Alliance. They want you to lead it." Sarah's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a security officer. Surely there are more qualified than the woman who united a dozen species to save the galaxy." Zara interrupted, chuckling. "Face it, Chief, you're not just a security officer anymore. You're a symbol of what we can achieve together. As if to emphasize Zora's point, a group of young aliens, a mix of species that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago, approached Sarah, their eyes shining with admiration. Security Chief Chen, a young Vroktar, said, his voice filled with awe. We were hoping. Could you tell us about Earth? About humanity? We want to understand where such wisdom comes from. Sarah smiled, gesturing for them to join her by the window. As she began to speak of her homeworld, of humanity's long and often troubled history, she realized that she was doing more than just telling a story. She was laying the foundation for a new galactic culture, one that drew strength from diversity, that faced challenges with unity and innovation. The stars twinkled beyond the window, bearing silent witness to the birth of a new era. An era where the boundaries between species blurred, where ancient rivalries gave way to friendship and cooperation. An era where humanity, once the newcomers on the galactic stage, now stood as leaders and inspirers. As Sarah Chen looked out at the vast expanse of space, she felt a profound sense of hope. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, but also fraught with dangers. Yet she knew now, with unshakable certainty, that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The human security officer had become something more, a bridge between worlds, a catalyst for change, a guardian of a brighter future. And as the newly united galaxy took its first steps into that future, Sarah Chen stood ready to lead the way. The end, and a new beginning.